My mother was supposed to be dead. Then she sent assassins. For 15 years, I thought I had the perfect life. Adopted by a wealthy, powerful family, 2 overprotective brothers, and a future most people could only dream of. But then, I found the secret room. The one filled with photos of me. From places I don't remember, taken by people I never met. That's when I realized I was being watched, tracked, controlled. And then the messages started. Anonymous texts, warnings, clues about a mother I thought was dead. And just when I was starting to connect the dots, I was kidnapped. That's when everything unraveled. Who my brothers really are, what my family was hiding, and why my past was erased. And trust me, the truth is crazier than anything I could have imagined. But here's the thing, if they thought I was just going to sit back and accept their lies, they were dead wrong. Before we continue, please like and subscribe. Chapter 1. I never asked to be special. But when you're adopted by the most powerful family in Sapphire Bay, normal isn't exactly in the cards. Miss Olivia, Harrison, our ancient butler, called out as I descended the grand staircase of the Blackwood estate. He was swaying slightly, and his bow was a bit too deep. Young mistress, your morning tea is, he hiccuped, catching himself, is served. I bit back a smile. Harrison only slipped up with the young mistress title when he'd been hitting the cooking sherry. It was an odd quirk, but then again, everything about this place was odd. Thank you, Harrison, I said, pretending not to notice how he steadied himself against the banister. And please, it's just Olivia. Of course, young Miss Olivia. He shuffled away, muttering something under his breath that sounded suspiciously just like her mother. I froze mid-step. My mother? But before I could question him, the dynamic duo burst into the foyer. Liv, called out Lucas, the younger of my adopted brothers by exactly 3 minutes, as he never failed to remind everyone. There you are. We've been looking everywhere for you, added Marcus, his supposedly older twin, wearing an identical navy suit and that same intensely protective expression I'd grown used to over the years. The Blackwood twins. My adoptive brothers, my protectors, my jailers, though I didn't know that last part yet. Looking back, I should have noticed how their eyes tracked my every movement. How they always seemed to appear whenever I made plans with anyone outside our circle. I literally just came downstairs, I pointed out, adjusting my messenger bag. And I'm late for coffee with Claire. Their faces did that weird synchronization thing that always gave me the creeps. Claire Matthews? Marcus asked, his tone carefully neutral. Wasn't she involved in that cheating scandal last semester? I rolled my eyes. That was Claire Peterson. Different Claire. How do you even know about that? We make it our business to know everything that happens at Bay State University, Lucas said. Like this was perfectly normal behavior, especially when it concerns our little sister. Right, I drawled. Because that's not creepy at all. A new voice joined our little morning drama. What's creepy? Isabella Martinez sauntered down the stairs, looking like she'd just stepped off a runway in her red designer dress. My other adopted sister, the perfect one. The one who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. She'd joined the family 2 years after me, and while everyone else saw a sweet, demure daddy's girl, I caught the calculating looks she sometimes threw my way. Like now, as her hand absently went to her throat, fingering a delicate gold locket that looked strangely familiar. Nothing, I said quickly, heading for the door. I'm late. Oh, Olivia? Isabella called after me, her voice honey sweet. You dropped this in the library yesterday. She held out a photo, an old one, yellowed at the edges. I'd never seen it before, but my heart stopped anyway, because the woman in the picture could have been my twin, just a decade or so older, standing in front of a building that looked remarkably like the Blackwood estate, except different, grander, older. That's not mine, I said, but took it anyway, shoving it into my bag. Isabella's smile didn't reach her eyes. Of course it is. Everything here is yours, isn't it? Or at least, it was meant to be. Before I could decode that cryptic comment, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Your mother's eyes were exactly that shade of green, and she's been looking for them for a very long time. I looked up sharply, but Isabella was already gone, leaving only the lingering scent of her perfume, and about 1,000 questions I didn't even know I should be asking. The twins flanked me like Secret Service agents. We'll drive you, Marcus announced. It's a 10-minute walk, I protested. There's been some suspicious activity reported downtown, Lucas countered smoothly. Better safe than sorry. I didn't argue. I'd learned long ago that resistance was futile when it came to the twins' overprotective streaks. Besides, my mind was too busy spinning with questions. The photo burning a hole in my bag, Isabella's strange comments, that text, and Harrison's drunken slip about my mother. My mother, who I'd been told died when I was 3. My mother, whose face I couldn't remember. My mother, who apparently had my exact shade of green eyes. As I slid into the back of the twins' ridiculously expensive SUV, I caught Marcus adjusting something that looked suspiciously like a tracking device under the dashboard. Just another normal day in the life of Olivia Chen Blackwood. If I'd known what was coming, the kidnapping, the betrayals, the earth-shattering family secrets, I might have paid more attention to the little details. The way Harrison always seemed to know more than he should. The mysterious locked room on the 3rd floor. The fact that every single security camera in the house seemed to turn slightly to follow my movements. But I didn't know. Not yet. And by the time I figured it out, it would almost be too late. Almost. Chapter 2. The coffee shop incident changed everything. I was sitting with Claire at the Grind, our favorite off-campus hideaway, trying to focus on her story about her disastrous Tinder date, but my mind kept wandering back to that photo in my bag. Liv? Earth to Olivia. Claire waved her hand in front of my face. You're doing that thing again where you pretend to listen, but you're actually somewhere else entirely. Sorry, I mumbled, fishing the photo out of my bag. It's just, does this woman look familiar to you? Claire studied the photograph, her brow furrowing. Well, yeah. She looks exactly like you. Just older. Is this your mom? I don't. A shadow fell across our table. Excuse me. A deep voice interrupted, but I couldn't help noticing. I looked up into the most gorgeous pair of blue eyes I'd ever seen. Their owner was tall, dressed in a suit that probably cost more than my car. Not that I was allowed to drive. The twins had very specific opinions about my safety, with dark hair, and a jawline that belonged on a movie poster. That you ladies seem to be out of coffee. He finished smoothly, gesturing to our empty cups. May I? Before I could respond, 2 things happened simultaneously. Claire kicked me under the table, and nodded enthusiastically, and I spotted Lucas entering the coffee shop, his face darkening when he saw our visitor. That's very kind, I said quickly, but we were just leaving. Were we? Claire protested, but I was already standing up, stuffing the photo back into my bag. Ethan Sterling, the stranger said, extending his hand. And you are? Late for a meeting. I finished, ignoring his hand, and Claire's look of absolute horror at my rudeness. Sorry. I practically dragged Claire out the back door, catching a glimpse of Marcus now joining Lucas at the entrance. Great. The twin patrol was in full force. Are you insane? Claire hissed as we speed walked through the alley. That was Ethan Sterling. As in, Sterling Technologies. As in, the youngest CEO on Forbes 30 under 30 list. As in, exactly the kind of guy you should be giving your number to. As in, exactly the kind of guy my brothers would have a conniption over, I corrected, checking over my shoulder. Trust me, I just saved us all a lot of drama. Your brothers need therapy, Claire muttered. Seriously, what's their deal? It's like they think you're going to get kidnapped or something. I laughed, but it came out hollow, because just last week, I'd found a detailed security protocol in Marcus's study titled Extraction Plan. OCB Compromise Scenario. I hadn't stayed to read it, but the few lines I'd caught made it clear that my brothers had planned for every possible way someone might try to take me. What I didn't know then was how right they were to worry. My phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. Smart girl. Avoiding Sterling. But you can't avoid your destiny forever, little fox. Ask Isabella about the locket. Okay, that's it. I stopped walking, turning to Claire. I need you to be honest with me. Have you noticed anything weird lately? People watching me? Strange texts? Claire's face went serious. You mean besides your brother's usual stalker vibes? Actually. She glanced around and lowered her voice. I saw Isabella coming out of the super sketchy antique shop last week. She was talking to someone, an older woman, who looked a lot like that photo you just showed me. When I tried to get a better look, they disappeared inside, and pulled the blinds. My heart started racing. What antique shop? Golden Dragon Antiquities, over on 8th. But Liv, I was already pulling up the location on my phone. I have to go. Wait, Claire caught my arm. Don't you think it's weird that I just happened to see that? That I just happened to be on 8th Street at exactly the right moment? I stared at her. What are you saying? She bit her lip. Maybe some of the people watching you are actually trying to protect you. Before I could process that bombshell, a black SUV screeched to a halt at the end of the alley. Marcus leaned out the window, his face like thunder. Olivia, get in the car. Now. I looked at Claire, who shrugged helplessly. Text me if you need an alibi, she whispered. The ride home was tense. Neither twin spoke, but they kept exchanging those creepy silent communication glances in the rearview mirror. Finally, Lucas broke the silence. Sterling is dangerous. He offered to buy me coffee, I pointed out. Not exactly terrorist activity. You don't understand. Marcus gripped the steering wheel tighter. His company, they're not what they seem. They've been investigating our family. What's to investigate? I asked innocently. We're just your average, everyday billionaire dynasty with a weird obsession with surveillance and security protocols, right? Both twins went very still. What do you mean? Lucas asked carefully. Whoa, nothing, I said sweetly. Just wondering why my supposedly normal family needs an extraction protocol for me. Or why Isabella has my mother's locket. Or maybe why there's a room full of my childhood photos that I've never seen before. The car swerved slightly. How do you know about the room? Marcus demanded. I don't, I said. I was guessing. But thanks for confirming it exists. We pulled up to the mansion, and I was out of the car before it fully stopped. As I stormed up the steps, I heard Lucas mutter, "She's getting too close." "It's too soon," Marcus replied. "We have to." But what they had to do, I didn't find out, because standing in the doorway was Isabella, wearing a red dress that made my blood run cold. Not because it was red, but because I'd seen it before. In that photograph, on my mother. Isabella smiled, twirling slowly. Like it? I found it in the attic. Your mother had excellent taste, didn't she? And that's when I knew, whatever game we were playing, whatever secrets were being kept, Isabella wasn't just a player. She was the dealer. Chapter 3. That's my mother's dress. The words came out before I could stop them. Even though I had no logical way of knowing this, I'd never met my mother, never seen her outside that one photograph. Yet somehow, seeing Isabella standing there in that red silk, something deep in my bones recognized it. Isabella's smile widened. Is it? How fascinating that you'd know that. Behind me, I heard the twins inhale sharply in unison. Creepy sync breathing. Never a good sign. Olivia, Marcus started, his voice carrying that warning tone I'd grown to hate. Inside. Now. But I was done being ordered around. No, I said, turning to face them. Not until someone starts explaining things. The room of photos, the surveillance, the extraction protocols. The what? Isabella interrupted, suddenly sharp. She shot the twins a look I couldn't quite interpret. You idiots left the protocols where she could find them. Lucas went pale. We didn't enough? I shouted. The force of it echoed across the marble foyer, making Harrison drop his ever-present silver tray somewhere in the distance. I'm not moving until someone tells me the truth. That's when I heard it. A soft click, like a camera shutter. I spun around to find Isabella holding up her phone, an odd expression on her face. What are you doing? Documenting the moment, she said softly. Your first real stand against them. She'll want to see this. Who will? But Isabella was already typing something, her fingers flying across the screen. My phone buzzed almost immediately. The Golden Dragon opens its doors at midnight. Come alone, little fox. Time to learn who you really are. I looked up, but Isabella was gone. The red dress whispered around the corner, leaving only the twins and me in our standoff. You're not going, Marcus said immediately. Like hell I'm not. Olivia, Lucas stepped forward, his face uncharacteristically gentle. Please, we've spent 15 years keeping you safe. Don't throw that away over some cryptic text. Safe from what? I demanded. What are you so afraid of? The twins exchanged another one of their looks. Marcus ran a hand through his hair, a tell I'd never seen before. He was rattled. We can't tell you, he said finally, but we can show you something. 20 minutes later, we stood before a door I'd somehow never noticed in 15 years of living here. It was hidden behind a false panel in the library, because apparently, we were living in a Gothic novel. Lucas pressed his hand to a concealed scanner, and the door swung open with a soft hiss. Very Gothic novel meets sci-fi. After you, Marcus gestured. I stepped into what looked like a command center from a spy movie. Monitors covered one wall, showing various angles of the house, the grounds, and was that my university campus. Another wall was covered in photographs, hundreds of them, all of me. Me as a toddler, me at my first day of school, me at last week's coffee run with Claire. But it was the central monitor that caught my eye. On it was a paused security feed from what looked like a hospital. The timestamp read 15 years ago, the day I was adopted. In the frame was a woman in a red dress, her face blurred, holding a bundle I assumed was me. Play it, I whispered. Marcus hesitated, then hit a key. The footage came to life. The woman was arguing with someone off screen, her movements desperate. She kept looking over her shoulder. Finally, she handed the bundle, handed me, to a nurse, pressed something into my blankets, and ran. Freeze, I said. Zoom in on her hand. The image enhanced. And there it was, the locket Isabella now wore. That's not all, Lucas said quietly. He tapped another key, and the image split to show a second feed. This one showed the same woman being bundled into a black car by men in suits. The camera zoomed in on the car's license plate just before it sped away. A license plate I'd seen just yesterday, parked outside Golden Dragon Antiquities. Holy shit, I breathed. She's alive. Olivia, Marcus started. But I was already backing toward the door. All this time, you knew. You've been watching me, tracking me, supposedly protecting me. But you knew she was alive. We didn't know for sure until 6 months ago, Lucas admitted, when Isabella arrived. What does Isabella have to do with? The mansion's security alarm cut me off, blaring through the speakers. On the monitors, red lights started flashing. Perimeter breach, a computerized voice announced. Multiple hostiles detected. Marcus was already moving, pulling what looked suspiciously like a gun from under the desk. Luke, get her to the panic room. Like hell, I said, but then the lights went out. In the darkness, I heard Isabella's voice float down the corridor. Too late, boys. The Golden Dragon's coming for its cub. The last thing I remember was a sweet, chemical smell as someone pressed a cloth to my face. As I lost consciousness, I caught a glimpse of red silk, and heard a familiar voice whisper. I'm sorry, little fox, but your mother sends her regards. Then everything went black. Chapter 4. I woke up to the smell of jasmine tea and expensive perfume. My head was pounding, and my mouth felt like it was stuffed with cotton. Through blurred vision, I made out ornate Chinese furniture, silk paintings, and Isabella, perched on an antique chair like she was posing for a magazine cover. Finally, she said, checking her Cartier watch. You always were a heavy sleeper. Mother said it took 3 lullabies to put you down as a baby. I tried to sit up, and discovered I wasn't restrained. Interesting. Either they were very confident, or this wasn't the kidnapping I thought it was. Where am I? My voice came out raspy. Golden Dragon Antiquities, Isabella replied, as if this was a normal shopping trip. Though that's just the front. The real business happens underground. And what business is that? Family business. A new voice, rich and cultured, came from the doorway. Hello, little fox. I turned so fast my head spun. There she was, the woman from the photograph, 15 years older, but unmistakable. My eyes, my nose, my mother. You're dead, I said stupidly. She laughed, and the sound triggered something deep in my memory. Reports of my death were greatly exaggerated, though necessary at the time. Necessary for what? I managed to stand, gripping a nearby table for support. For abandoning me? For letting me think I was alone? You were never alone, she corrected. The twins who just let me get kidnapped? Isabella snorted. Please, they're probably already. An explosion rocked the building, sending porcelain vases crashing to the floor. Here, Isabella finished with a sigh. My mother looked amused. Right on schedule. Isabella, dear, do slow them down. I need a moment with my daughter. Isabella nodded and slipped out, pausing only to drop something in my lap, the locket. Once we were alone, my mother, Catherine Chen, according to the sleek business card on her desk, poured 2 cups of tea with practiced elegance. I suppose you have questions. Only about 15 years worth, I said, but accepted the tea. Let's start with why you abandoned me to a family of surveillance-obsessed control freaks. The Blackwoods were the only ones I trusted to keep you safe, she said simply. Though the twins, that was an unexpected complication. What do you mean? She raised an eyebrow. Haven't you ever wondered why they're so synchronized? So protective? So eerily alike? I thought about their identical expressions, their silent communications, their shared obsession with my safety. They're twins. That's what twins do. They're not twins, she said softly. They're not even brothers. They're copies. I nearly dropped my teacup. What? The Blackwoods' little science experiment. Clones, created to be the perfect protectors. They were supposed to guard the family fortune. But then you came along, and their programming shifted. I remembered all those times they seemed to move as one, think as one. How they always knew when I was in trouble. How they never got sick at different times. Never disagreed on anything concerning me. That's insane, I said. But even as I said it, pieces were clicking into place. Is it? Check the locket. With trembling fingers, I opened the gold pendant. Inside was a tiny microchip. That contains everything, my mother said. The truth about the Blackwoods experiments. About why I had to disappear. About your real inheritance. My inheritance. She smiled, and it wasn't entirely kind. Did you think the Blackwoods built their fortune themselves? Everything they have, they built using patents they stole from our family. Patents for human genetic modification, patents that rightfully belong to you. Another explosion, closer this time. Shouts echoed from below. That would be your guard dogs, my mother said dryly. Always so punctual. One last thing before they burst in. Do you remember Ethan Sterling? My mind flashed to the handsome stranger from the coffee shop. What about him? He's been working for me, investigating the Blackwoods, keeping tabs on you. He's also your fiancé. I choked on my tea. My what? An arrangement made at your birth. The Sterling-Chen merger was supposed to revolutionize genetic medicine. Instead, she gestured vaguely. Well, corporate espionage is such an ugly business. The door burst open. Marcus and Lucas stood there, looking decidedly worse for wear. Guns trained on my mother. Behind them, Isabella leaned against the wall, examining her nails. Step away from her, Marcus growled. My mother just smiled. Boys, is that any way to greet your creator? Both twins went rigid. What did you just say? Oh yes, she said, taking a casual sip of tea. Did Edward never tell you? Who do you think designed the cloning process? The genetic modifications that make you so special. She's lying, Lucas said, but his gun hand wavered. Am I? Check your left shoulders. That birthmark you share? It's not a birthmark. It's a manufacturing stamp. My manufacturing stamp. I looked between them, my mother, smiling serenely over her teacup. The twins, their perfect symmetry suddenly seeming sinister. Isabella, who I was starting to suspect wasn't really adopted at all. Well, I said, clutching the locket, this is awkward. That's when the real shooting started. Chapter 5. The first bullet shattered my mother's teacup. The second took out the antique vase behind her head. The third never landed, because Marcus and Lucas moved in perfect synchronization, forming a human shield around me while returning fire at the doorway. Blackwood security team, my mother said calmly, brushing porcelain shards from her sleeve. Right on schedule. Isabella. Isabella pulled out what looked like a TV remote and pressed a button. Instantly, the gunmen at the door dropped like puppets with cut strings. Electromagnetic pulse, she explained, catching my startled look. Disrupts their neural implants. Don't worry, they'll wake up with nothing worse than a headache and some questions about their career choices. Neural implants? I looked at the twins, who were doing that creepy silent communication thing again. Let me guess, you have those too? Not exactly, Lucas said, keeping his gun trained on my mother. We're different. You're talking intellectual property theft, my mother corrected. Edward Blackwood's greatest triumph, and biggest mistake. He stole my research, used it to create you, but he could never quite replicate the stability protocols. That's why you're so attached to Olivia. You imprinted on her like baby ducks. We protect her, Marcus growled, which is more than you've done. Whoa, honey, my mother smiled. I've been protecting her since before you were a gleam in a test tube. Speaking of which, she checked her watch. Ethan should be dealing with Edward right about now. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a news alert. Breaking. Blackwood Industries CEO Edward Blackwood arrested on charges of corporate espionage and illegal human experimentation. You've been planning this, I realized. All of it. Isabella's adoption, the coffee shop coincidence with Ethan, the kidnapping, it was all staged. Not all of it, Isabella interjected. The twins' obsessive protection? That was genuine. Creepy, but genuine. They really do love you. In their own genetically engineered way. I looked at Marcus and Lucas, my brothers, my protectors, my scientifically manufactured guardians. They looked back with identical expressions of concern and detonation. We were created to protect the Blackwood legacy, Lucas said softly. But you became our legacy. How poetic, my mother drawled, but ultimately irrelevant. Olivia darling, it's time to choose. Stay with your test tube bodyguards, or come with me, and claim your real inheritance. The Chen family empire, the genetic patents, the truth about who you are. What about who they are? I challenged, gesturing to the twins. Are you going to tell me what really happens to them if their stability protocols fail? Something flickered across her face. Guilt? Fear? They weren't meant to last this long. The original design we're degrading. Marcus cut in, his voice flat. Aren't we? That's why we've been getting headaches, having memory glitches. The original protocol required regular genetic updates, my mother admitted. Updates only I know how to provide. Without them. She spread her hands. Well, let's just say Edward's shortcuts are catching up with you. I felt sick. How long? 6 months, maybe less. Unless, I prompted, because there's always an unless in these situations. Unless you come with me, she said. Help me rebuild Chen Biotech. With our combined resources, we might be able to stabilize their genetic code permanently. Might? It's better odds than they have now. I looked around the room, At my long-lost mother with her elegant ruthlessness, at Isabella with her hidden loyalties and secrets, at the twins who dedicated their artificial lives to protecting me. Counter-offer, I said, pulling out the locket. You give me the stabilization protocol, and in return, you get all the evidence in here about the Blackwoods theft. Don't be naive, she scoffed. That chip contains enough evidence to destroy multiple corporations. It's worth billions. And they're worth more. I nodded at the twins. Choose, mother. The revenge you've spent 15 years planning, or the daughter you claim to love. She studied me for a long moment, then laughed. You really are my daughter. That was a perfect corporate negotiation move. She held out her hand. Deal. That's when Ethan Sterling burst in through the window, because apparently this day wasn't complicated enough already. Sorry I'm late, he said, brushing glass off his very expensive suit. Traffic was murder. Also, your father's security team is surprisingly persistent, boys. The twins raised their guns again, but Ethan just grinned. Whoa, put those away. If I wanted to hurt anyone, I wouldn't have spent the last 3 years infiltrating Blackwood Industries, just to blow my cover now. He turned to me with a slight bow. By the way, I believe we're engaged, though I'm open to renegotiating that contract if you are. I pinched the bridge of my nose. Does anyone else have any life-altering revelations they'd like to share? Secret siblings? Hidden superpowers? Because now would be the time. Isabella raised her hand. Actually, about that third sister your mother mentioned. Not now. I took a deep breath. Okay, here's what's going to happen. Mother, you're going to save the twins. Ethan, you're going to help me take control of both companies. Isabella, I looked at her suspiciously. You're going to tell me the truth about everything. Eventually. And us? Marcus asked quietly. I turned to my genetically engineered brothers. You two are going to learn how to be real boys, instead of overprotective robots. Starting with letting me buy my own coffee without running background checks on the barista. But, Lucas started. No buts. Those are my terms. I crossed my arms. Any objections? 4 heads shook in unison. Good. I picked up my mother's unbroken teacup, and took a sip. Now about that third sister. Chapter 6. 6 months can change everything. I was sitting in what used to be Edward Blackwood's office, my office now, watching Marcus and Lucas chase each other around the mansion's garden like actual brothers, instead of synchronized security drones. The genetic stabilization treatment had done more than just save their lives, it had somehow made them more human. They're playing tag, Isabella observed, perching on my desk. Should we be worried about the fact that our genetically engineered super soldiers are acting like 12-year-olds? Probably. I smiled as Lucas tackled Marcus into a rosebush. But I'll take it over the creepy twins speak any day. Speaking of creepy, Isabella nodded toward the door, where Ethan stood with his perpetual smirk. Your mother's here, he announced. With a guest. I straightened my blazer, Chen Biotech's latest innovation, embedded with smart fibers that could deflect bullets. A girl can't be too careful these days. Show them in. My mother swept into the office looking exactly as she had that day at Golden Dragon Antiquities, elegant, dangerous, and slightly amused by everything. Behind her came a young woman I'd never seen before, but whose face I knew as well as my own. Olivia, my mother said smoothly, meet Victoria. Your twin sister. I heard Isabella choke on her coffee. I'm sorry, I said slowly. My what now? Victoria gave a little wave. Surprise? Also, technically, I'm 4 minutes older. I looked between them, my mother's satisfied smile, Victoria's nervous fidgeting, Isabella's barely contained glee. You knew? I accused Isabella. Of course I knew. I've been running your security for 6 months. Did you really think I wouldn't notice someone with your exact DNA lurking around? Not lurking, Victoria protested. Strategic reconnaissance. Stalking. Isabella translated. Can we focus? I rubbed my temples. Mother, you had 6 months to tell me about this. Why now? Catherine Chen settled into a chair like it was a throne. Because now you're ready. You've taken control of both companies, stabilized the twins, and proven you can handle complicated family dynamics. You mean I proved I wouldn't have her arrested like I did Edward Blackwood? Victoria supplied helpfully. Which, by the way, excellent work there, though I would have gone with more dramatic handcuffs. I studied my newfound sister. Same face, same eyes, but where I radiated corporate polish, she had a wild energy about her. Her designer clothes looked like they'd been put through a war zone. And was that a lockpick set peeking out of her boot? Let me guess, I said. While I was being groomed as the corporate heir, you were learning different skills. Someone had to do the dirty work of exposing Blackwood's crimes. She shrugged. Those secret labs weren't going to raid themselves. A crash from the garden drew our attention. The twins had discovered the sprinkler system. Speaking of labs, my mother interjected. Have you told them yet? I tensed. Told them what? That the stabilization treatment isn't permanent. They'll need regular updates, which only we can provide. You said. I said we could stabilize them. I never said for how long. She held up a hand as I started to protest. It's not blackmail, darling. It's insurance. The twins are dangerous. They need oversight. They need family, Victoria corrected. Which, apparently, we all are now. Weird science experiments and all. I looked out at Marcus and Lucas, now engaged in what appeared to be a mud fight. At Isabella, who'd appointed herself my shadow and conscience. At Victoria, my mirror image turned corporate spy. At my mother, who'd orchestrated this entire elaborate dance. New rule, I announced. No more secrets. No more tests. No more using genetic manipulation as a corporate strategy. We're going to be a normal family. Everyone stared at me for a moment before bursting into laughter. Okay, fine, I amended. As normal as a family can be when it includes clones, twins, corporate espionage, and whatever Isabella actually is. Hey, Isabella protested. Still waiting on that full explanation, by the way. She smiled mysteriously. Maybe in the sequel. My phone buzzed. A security alert showing multiple vehicles approaching the mansion. Blackwood's old board members, Ethan reported, checking his tablet. They're making a play for control of the company. I stood, straightening my bulletproof blazer. Victoria, how do you feel about a little corporate infiltration? For old time's sake. My twins' eyes lit up. Does it involve breaking and entering? Only legally. Boring. I'm in anyway. Mother raised an elegant eyebrow. Remember, darling, in corporate takeovers as in life, it's not about who has the most power. It's about who has the best secrets, Isabella finished. I looked around at my strange, dangerous, absolutely insane family and smiled. Well then, let's give them something to talk about. Outside, the twins had started teaching themselves parkour on the mansion walls. Because of course they had. Just another normal day in the life of Olivia Chen Blackwood. At least no one was trying to kidnap me. Yet. Epilogue. From the diary of Olivia Chen Blackwood 1 year later. Dear future corporate overlord, or federal investigator, depending on how things turn out, they say you can't choose your family, but sometimes family chooses you, with genetic manipulation, corporate espionage, and a truly concerning amount of surveillance equipment. It's been a year since I discovered the truth about mine. A year since I went from adopted Blackwood heiress to Chen Biotech CEO. A year since I gained a twin sister, saved my clone brothers, and inherited enough family secrets to fill the National Archives. Here's where everyone ended up. Marcus and Lucas have mostly recovered from their creepy twin synchronization. Mostly. They still finish each other's sentences and occasionally move in perfect unison. But now it's by choice rather than programming. They've channeled their protective instincts into running our corporate security division, though I had to bend them from putting tracking devices in the office coffee cups. Baby steps. Victoria turned out to be exactly the sister I never knew I needed. She handles our special acquisitions division, which is corporate speak for legally questionable, but ethically necessary operations. Last month she liberated 3 illegal cloning facilities while wearing a cocktail dress and combat boots. Mother was so proud. Speaking of mother, Catherine Chen remains an elegant enigma wrapped in designer suits and questionable morals. She's technically retired, but somehow still knows everything that happens in both companies before I do. I've stopped trying to figure out how. Some mysteries are better left unsolved. Ethan Sterling, my technically still fiancé, runs our R&D department when he's not flirting outrageously with both me and Victoria. I'm pretty sure he does it just to make the twins twitch. Our engagement remains under negotiation, which mostly means we are too busy running our corporate empire to plan a wedding. And Isabella? Well, that's complicated. She's still my right hand, still keeps more secrets than the CIA, and still won't tell me exactly what her deal is. Last week I caught her speaking fluent Mandarin to one of our Chinese investors. When I asked where she learned it, she just winked and said, "Spoilers, darling." As for me, I'm learning that running a biotech empire while managing a family of genetically enhanced overachievers is actually easier than trying to be normal. We've turned the mansion into a combination corporate headquarters and slightly dysfunctional home. The twins installed a parkour course in the garden. Victoria has a tactical training room in the basement. Mother holds her retirement tea parties in the conservatory, which definitely don't involve planning hostile takeovers. They totally do. We're not normal, we're not even trying to be anymore. We're the Chen Blackwoods. Part family, part scientific experiment, all slightly unhinged, but somehow making it work. Oh, and remember that third sister Isabella mentioned? Funny story about that. The rest of this entry has been redacted for reasons of corporate security and plausible deniability. Yours in genetic complexity. Olivia Chen Blackwood CEO. Chen Blackwood Industries Professional Chaos Coordinator still figuring out this whole family thing. P.S. If you're reading this, Harrison, please stop adding vodka to your morning tea. We all know. P.P.S. If you're reading this, Mother, yes, I know about the secret lab under the tennis court. We'll discuss it at Sunday dinner. P.P.P.S. If you're reading this, mysterious third sister, your move. End of diary entry. Family is the most dangerous organization of all. Found carved into Isabella's desk drawer, author unknown. But probably Isabella.